Hi y'all, you're watching the Big Jim Country Boy YouTube channel. Yeehaw!
Ever wondered what to do with all those leftovers in your fridge? We've all been there, staring at a refrigerator full of last night's dinner or the remnants of a takeout feast. It's a common situation that most of us find ourselves in, and let's face it, food waste is a real issue. So what if we could turn this problem into an opportunity? An opportunity to not only reduce waste, but also to whip up a culinary delight. Yes, you heard it right. We're talking about transforming those leftovers into a delicious, hearty stew. From leftover roasted chicken to half-eaten steaks, from cooked pasta to that tiny bowl of rice, you can create something wholesome and tasty. And the best part? There's no one way to do it. It's all about getting creative with what you've got. Stay tuned to learn a simple yet creative way to turn your leftovers into a hearty stew. Let's embark on this culinary adventure together. The first step is to gather your ingredients. Take a good look at what you have in your fridge. We're on a mission to create a delicious stew from leftovers, so let's dive in, shall we? Start by sifting through your refrigerator. You'll be surprised at the variety of ingredients you can find. Leftover takeout? Check. A bunch of veggies? Perfect. Half-eaten Chinese food, rice, pasta, or even chunks of steak, chicken, pork, fish, turkey? They're all fair game, but remember, we're not just throwing everything into the pot. Be selective, be creative. Consider the combinations that will work well. Got some leftover roast beef and a handful of vegetables? You're halfway to a hearty beef stew. Or perhaps you've got some chicken, rice, and a bit of salsa. Sounds like a Tex-Mex stew is on the cards. However, be sure to disregard anything that you're not sure is still good. When in doubt, throw it out. Now let's talk about the broth. This is where the magic happens. It's the flavorful liquid that binds your stew together. If you're leaning towards a vegetable stew, consider adding tomatoes, tomato sauce, or even juice. If it's a beef stew you're after, a little black coffee, onion, and salt can create a robust, beefy broth. You can also use bouillon cubes for a quick and easy flavor boost. Got leftover gravy? Toss it in. It'll enrich your stew with a depth of flavor. The key is to keep it balanced. You don't want any one ingredient to overpower the others. It's a symphony, not a solo. And remember, water is your friend. It helps to dilute if things get too intense, but it also provides the base for your stew. Spices are the final touch. Think of them as the conductor of your symphony, guiding the flavors and bringing out the best in your ingredients. So go ahead, add a dash of this, a sprinkle of that. But do it with caution. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. Once you've picked your ingredients, it's time to get cooking. Now that we have our ingredients, it's time to start cooking. Grab a large pot and let's get started. First things first, we need to deal with our leftovers. We'll want to chop everything up into bite-sized pieces. This includes any leftover takeout, vegetables, and any type of meat you might have, be it chicken, beef, or even fish. The key here is to make sure everything is evenly sized so it cooks at the same rate. As you chop, toss everything into your pot. No need to be fancy here, just get it all in there. With our pot full of potential, let's turn our attention to the broth. Now, this is where you can get creative. If you want a vegetable-forward stew, consider adding some tomatoes or tomato sauce. If you're looking for something more hearty, a bit of black coffee, onion, and salt can mimic a beefy broth. Don't be afraid to experiment here. The broth is the backbone of your stew, and it can make or break your dish. You can also add any leftover gravy you might have. It will add a beautiful depth of flavor and a silky texture to your stew. Once you've made your broth choice, pour it over your chopped ingredients. If it doesn't quite cover everything, don't panic. Just add a bit of water until everything is submerged. At this point, you'll want to add your favorite spices. This could be anything from a simple salt and pepper combo to a more complex blend of herbs and spices. Remember, this is your stew, and it should taste like you want it to. Now, it's time to bring it all together. Turn your heat to medium and stay close. This isn't the time to start a new episode of your favorite show. You'll want to stir your stew frequently to ensure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. As your stew heats up, take a moment to taste it. Does it need more salt? If so, add a bit and stir it in well. Taste again. If it's too salty, don't worry. Adding a bit of water will balance it out. Finally, don't forget the pepper. It's the unsung hero of the stew world, adding a bit of heat and complexity that can take your stew from good to great. We're almost there. Next, we'll bring the stew to life with some heat and seasoning. So grab your ladle and let's get ready to stir up some deliciousness. This stew is going to be a feast for the senses. And the best part is, it's made from what you already had. So let's get cooking. It's time to turn up the heat. Remember, medium to low heat is best for a simmering stew. Now that our stew is full of our carefully chosen leftovers, it's time to give it some heat. Set your stove to medium-low. We don't want to rush this process. The slow simmering allows all the flavors to meld together beautifully. As our stew begins to bubble, keep a close eye on it, stirring frequently. This will prevent any ingredients from sticking to the bottom of the pot and burning. The aroma wafting from the pot is tantalizing, isn't it? But before we get too excited, let's take a moment to taste our creation. Grab a spoon and carefully taste the broth. Remember, it's hot. Now let's talk about seasoning. The beauty of a stew is its adaptability. You are the master of your culinary domain. Do you want more heat? Add a dash of cayenne. If you're a fan of more earthy flavors, a sprinkle of thyme or rosemary could be just the ticket. The goal here is to create a balance of flavors that suits your palate. But what if you find your stew is too salty? Don't fret. A common misconception is that a salty stew is a ruined stew. This couldn't be further from the truth. If you've been a bit heavy-handed with the salt, there's a simple fix. Just add a little more water. The extra liquid will dilute the saltiness. Once you've adjusted the seasoning, give it another stir, and then another taste. Adjusting the seasoning is a bit like a dance. You add a little of this, a little of that, stir, taste, and repeat until you hit that sweet spot. And let's not forget about pepper. A few grinds of fresh black pepper can add that final touch. That little bit of heat and spice that pulls everything together. As you stir, taste, and season, remember that cooking is as much an art as it is a science. It's about tasting and adjusting, and most importantly, enjoying the process. The joy you take in preparing your meal will shine through in the flavors of your stew. So let's give it one more taste. Ah, perfection. The balance of flavors, the depth of the broth, the tender bite of the vegetables. It's a symphony of deliciousness. And there you have it, a perfectly seasoned stew made from your leftovers. Cooking doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. With a bit of creativity and a willingness to experiment, you can turn what might have been wasted into a delightful and satisfying meal. After all, the best dishes are made not just with leftovers, but with love. Now that our stew is hot and ready, it's time to serve it up. Picture this, a bowl of your hearty stew, steaming and filled with the flavors of your chosen ingredients. Alongside, a crisp, fresh salad and a piece of crusty bread to mop up those delicious juices. Let's do a quick recap. We started by sorting through our leftovers, choosing the best, and discarding anything past its prime. We chopped it all up, tossed it in a pot, and thoughtfully selected our broth. We added our spices, gave it some heat, and adjusted the taste as we went. The result? A meal that's not only mouth-wateringly tasty but also economical and environmentally friendly. By using leftovers to create this stew, we've saved money and reduced waste. We've turned what might have been thrown away into something truly delightful. Not only have you created a delicious meal, but you've also saved money and reduced waste. Now that's a win-win situation.